Hello, my loves. Welcome to Be for Vibrant. This is a people pleasers in recovery card reading. My name is Kellyanne, and I'm so excited to read for you today. I connect very much with the people pleaser recovery stories, so that's why I focus on this because it's really important to me to sort of keep track on that personal growth, personal development, and even spiritual growth journey, keep track of the mile markers. Like, where have I been? Where am I now? And what am I looking forward to? And that's what this reading is about. We have the archetype cards by Caroline Myss that are essentially Jungian archetypes, sort of like if you've ever watched Game of Thrones, you've got mother, oh my gosh, and now I'm like confusing them. Mother, father, stranger, warrior. Okay. So similar to that, we have other archetypes like judge or bully or artist. We have lots of different archetypes, which are roles that we play. And this reading today at the start of February here is to help you understand where we're at as of the start of February and also where we're going. So, where have we been? And what do we have to look forward to? Now, these are some roles that you might have been playing, but I want to try to start all of my card readings with these are general, which means that not everything is going to apply to you. So chew on the fruit, spit out the seeds, but also there are going to be some lovingly curated messages that are hard to hear. Okay. When we get card readings and we endeavor to get the clarity that comes from a medium, somebody who doesn't quite know you and is a neutral party who isn't giving you advice, but knows some shit about you because they're connecting to your energy and is able to make suggestions from that place. It might feel a little weird. It might feel a little squidgy. It might be like, she's looking into my soul. And then also, there are going to be themes and topics or ideas that I'm going to be bringing up. I can already tell from this reading that are going to be challenging to the perspective and the lenses through which you see the world. Okay. So, the reason that I do card readings is to confirm things that you already know about yourself or about the world, and to clarify things that you aren't sure about. But the other thing here, my other C word, is to challenge you to shift your perspective, to challenge you to shift into a new way of seeing things or a new way of operating so that you can begin to challenge yourself and take on the invitation that is inherent in a card reading, which is, do you want things to be as they are? Or is there more work to do? And I know we're tired. We don't want to we don't have want to have more work to do. But when it comes to spiritual work and it comes to personal growth, it's work that we take on with delight when we are committed to devoting ourselves to it, because we delight in understanding that this is the kind of work that is going to make our lives significantly better and also create ripples out into the rest of the world so that the changes that happen within us can be changes that we see in our relationships and our workplace and our families. It's all things that we know that we need, which is why it's so challenging to hear and also such a delight when we devote ourselves to it. Because ultimately, I'm just pulling from seeds from the universe, from threads that the universe is giving me, and I'm tying them together. And I'm saying, look at this pretty bow that it's making. So I want y'all to see that pretty bow, and I want y'all to consider how much of this message is actually for you and how much of it maybe feels um, a little challenging to hear or to sit with. All right, let's begin. So we have the archetype cards here. We've got the cards that show us where you've been, cards that show us where you are now, and cards that show us where you're going. And by you, I mean the people pleasers in recovery, because we're all going through the same thing in different ways around the same time. I mean, that's just how it works. That's just how the universe works. So we're going to start with where we were, where we've come from. All right. First of all, first of all, we've got the artist card, which has its own light and shadow attributes. And then we also have the priest card. And I'm going to read those light attributes and the shadow attributes so we can really get into it. All right. Our priest, the light attributes include facilitates, excuse me, facilitates spiritual commitments, serves as a channel of spiritual energy. Shadow attributes violates the trust of your spiritual community, seduced by your own spiritual role. So already I'm seeing the story of people pleasers coming into their recovery as a means for spiritual liberation and spiritual self-leadership. When I think of the priest, I think of self-leadership in the sense that there isn't like attending a congregation and having somebody tell you how to follow the God that you have a relationship with, but you being the one to do your own research and to do your own internal processing so that you can discover for yourself where those connections with your God, whether your God is nature, whether your God is capital God with Christ, um, whether it's Allah, it doesn't matter who your God is, so long as you are the one who is the anchor for that relationship and you're not relying on anybody else. Because people pleasers in recovery have found that they need to recover from letting other people decide for them and listening and taking too seriously what other people say, not only about their lives and what other people think they should be doing with their lives, but also how other people live theirs. Because what people pleasers tend to do is give more credit to other people's way of life and the good in other people than we give credit to our own good and our own intrinsic sense of right and wrong. So, what we've been doing, congrats to us, is maintaining our own spiritual anchor, maintaining our own sense of selves. And I say selves because there are a lot of us in here. You see all these roles, you see all these archetypes? These are all in you. They're all in you. So take that for what you will, because our shadow attributes here also include violating the trust of your spiritual community and seduced by your own spiritual role. So another thing that we might tend to do, especially because people pleasers in recovery, as in codependence in recovery, tend to be neurodivergents, tend to be people with ADHD, autism, depression, anxiety, which is developed through the sort of layers of PTSD or the spectrum of PTSD and post-traumatic relationships disorder, PTRD, that uh, makes us think that we need to rely on other people to tell us how to live our lives. And so what we might do is the neurodivergence in us has us go from that like I trust myself 0% to I trust myself 100%. And that is being seduced by your own spiritual role. So there's kind of a middle path. There's a moderate path that is in the middle there between I explicitly trust everybody else more than me, and I can only trust myself because for so many years other people have been steering me wrong. The thing is, when it comes to being human and being a spiritual human, you need community. We are wired for connection. So that doesn't mean throw the baby out with the bathwater, okay? Don't throw out everybody else's regard for you, everybody else's perspectives, everybody else's values and opinions that might be able to help reinforce your own. But that also doesn't mean, you know, that also doesn't mean like cling to how things were and take such small baby steps toward your own inner trust that you're still relying on other people, because that's a way that you violate the trust of your spiritual community. Like if you start to lean on, and if you've maybe met and made friends with a spiritual group, a spiritual facing group, maybe it's from the yoga studio that you go to, or maybe it's from like the artist guild that you've started to attend, or art classes that you've started to attend. And there's a spiritual nature to connecting with a community and talking about deeper things than the weather. Um, if you are also relying a little too heavily on on their way of life and the rightness that you sense in it being like the thing that you need to throttle yourself toward in your recovery, that is also a violation of spiritual community, because then you're giving too much power to that community, but you're also, again, giving up some of your authority to an entire group's understanding of the world. Again, it's about the self-trust. And I think that's where the priest really shines, is in trusting what you are hearing and the messages that you receive to and for yourself, just as much as you trust the people that you feel safe with to ask them and to be curious about, how does this sit in your body? This is a truth that's been sitting really nicely in my body, and or really confusingly in my body. How does it sit in your body? That's the kind of framework that we want for having a healthy communion with others. But the priest doesn't go, I'm gonna give it all up to you and you're gonna give me all the answers. This is what we're in recovery from, is that people-pleasing manipulation of others to tell us how to live our lives, because it's easier. It's easier when other people tell us how to do it. We're just little baby subs out here. We're just little submissives who, if we get the chance, we just let other people sort of dominate and and tell us how to live our lives. It's really nice. It's really nice. But also not that helpful anymore. Not the healed version of ourselves anymore. Like I said, there's a middle ground there. And I think that brings in our artist here, whose light attributes include expressing a dimension of life that is just beyond the five senses, inspiring others to see life symbolically. And the shadow attributes include using talent as an excuse to mistreat others, posing as the starving artist to elicit pity. This feels like a reiteration of that priest message, which is like you're eliciting from other people maybe a sense of like, wow, I still don't know what I'm doing. And I don't say that to make fun of anybody or to like downplay or belittle that sense of self-pity. I say it because we all have our own like wounded child who is trying to recreate our own worlds. Like recovery from any kind of relationship abuse involves you having direct conversations with your inner child and saying, okay, what's going to make you feel more safe next? What's going to make you feel more loved next? What's going to make you feel more connected next? And as you have those conversations, you're going to be tempted to let other people know, like around you, hey, this is what I need for co-regulation. And when you don't feel like you can give that to yourself, yeah, it can kind of come off as a little bit of starving artist, where it's like, I'm never going to be, I'm never going to have the relationships that I really want to have because nobody's going to play ball with me. Like, nobody. Nobody is going to give me that sense of fulfillment that I'm really looking for because either nobody's trying to level up like I am, or nobody understands like the skills that it takes to do this, or nobody's willing to co-regulate with me because I'm so fucking messy right now. For me, my people pleaser recovery was really fucking messy, y'all. And I talk about this recently in my Substack. The link to my Substack is in the description for this video. I talk about this recently about the unmasking process for ADHD autistic people. I can only speak as a person who was raised as a girl and raised to be a woman. But still, I talk about the experience of as an ADHD autistic person unmasking and finding how fucking chaotic and messy it was to not have it all to not be so together anymore. Like that was my mask. And part of that was perfectionism. And I'll talk about that in another video because I am going to do a reading for perfectionists. I am going to do a reading for perfectionism because we also have these other stories and narratives that I'm sure are going to weave into this people-pleasing story, but perfectionism is another mask that we wear. And as an artist, as the person that we were performing. We were performing. That's a level of artistry and a level of skill that it takes to continue to feel connected in a world where we don't always feel like we're right for this world. We feel like we're wrong or too weird for this world. And instead, what we've started to align with and started to understand is that it takes skill. It takes incredible emotional skill to be able to co-regulate with other people, which is why some people, when they see us being emotionally messy and emotionally purging after all these years of being so contained, they're like, I don't want to do that with you. You're scary. People were scared of me when I was in my people pleaser recovery. So I want to just like make note of the artist role and the artist archetype in this story of like where we've come from is telling us that we were finger painting on the walls, that we just came from that place where things were messy. We were finger painting on the walls. We were trying to get attention and trying to seek attention for the sake of getting other people to do the work with us and to make the work irresistible or or provoke others with the work that we're doing. That's what an artist does. They provoke and they make the revolution irresistible. I forget whose quote that is. But artists' job is to make revolution irresistible. And it's also to provoke, to make others think differently, see differently, feel things that they're avoiding feeling. And if you just came from a place where you were trying to invoke in others that same sense of, I need to feel this because I've been avoiding it, and there's beauty in this, and there's an emotional skill that I practice when I allow myself to feel this and when I invite others to feel it with me, because relationships and that inner child healing happens in community and happens through connection. then where we're going and where we are now is a place where we've got, and this is the present here, we've got magical child energy and bully energy. Now, whenever stuff comes up like this, like bully sounds like a bad thing. And for many of these archetypes, vampire, bully, they saboteur, victim, they sound like bad things, but they all have their own light aspects. So I'm going to bring that into focus here, okay? So we'll start with the bully because it's kind of like pulling the death card when you're when you're watching or you're doing a tarot reading. It's like in tarot there are a lot of other scary cards like the hangman or death card, and they don't always mean literal death and they don't always mean literal bullying. So what do we have instead? Okay? For for the bully, excuse me, for the bully, the light attributes include highlights your tendency to intimidate others, helps you confront the inner fears that bully you. Shadow attribute conceals deep fears behind verbal or physical abuse. So, to bring into focus where we were into where we are now, where we came from is this place of like trying to figure out how to anchor trust in ourselves and into that big thing that is outside of us that affects us, that God within ourselves, that big universe feeling, and also trusting in our spiritual communities that we find through that process and the relationships that we develop through the recovery process so that we can excavate our inner child and all of the like emotional resourcing that they are actually in fact capable of but need to do in community. Now, community is going to find us as bullies, going to think that we are bullies or going to think that we are intimidating because we are doing things as people pleasers in recovery. We're doing things that used to intimidate us. We're doing things now. This is the present here. This is where we are now. We are now available to, and we are now rooted in acting and behaving in ways that kind of scare us and maybe open us up to the resentments and the fears that we were concealing before. Because a big part of the people pleaser recovery process is learning about boundaries, figuring out what the fuck boundaries are, and how to be able to express them to others, either in real time or within a short period of time after. Because, like, once you wait too long, I have a 48-hour rule for myself. Because once you wait too long after some kind of conflict or some kind of confrontation makes us confront a way that we feel about something that we don't like or that challenges our values, the the best thing that we can do is set a boundary with that person or set a boundary with ourselves and make note, I'm not going to let this happen again. And if this particular thing happens, here is what I will do. It's boundaries are an agreement that we make with ourselves, and they're so intimidating and they build layers of fear and resentment when we let them intimidate us out of actually using them and out of actually presenting them to others. We kind of just ingest all of those bad feelings and let them sit in us if we don't let that that fear become named and become owned. And that's what the bully does. The bully is going to provoke in you and in others that sense of that act of naming what it is that we are afraid of. Helps you confront inner fears that bully you, highlights the tendency to intimidate others. So if you just came, it's 11:11 my time, wee! So if you just came from a place where your emotional journey has been like pretty chaotic and seem like there's a lot of turmoil going on there, then you might be intimidating for that reason because you're now accepting and allowing yourself to feel your own sense of safety from that spiritual place that you got into with the priest. You've allowed yourself to feel that sense of safety with doing things that you didn't feel like you were safe to do before. And that is intimidating on for its own reasons because a lot of people are afraid to just do things in spite of the fear. Do things in spite of whether or not it is perfectly safe or they feel safe because perceived safety is different from actual safety. Sometimes they don't align. So other people are going to interpret that like sort of emotional volatility as turmoil instead of the emotional volatility being the thing that's showing you and preparing you for how emotions really operate, how emotions really unfold. Sometimes it feels like it's volatile. Sometimes it feels caustic, like if you touch it, it's acid that's burning me and it's solely consuming me from the place where I touched it. So it's like when we experience negative emotions, emotions that we have labeled as negative, then what we do is we we try to flinch, we try to protect ourselves, we try to create distance. Oh no, I raised my hand. Lower hand. We create that distance that shows just how intimidated we are by our own emotions. But when we're not doing that anymore, we are invoking, and here we are. This is again the other card for the present, that magical child. Light attributes, seeing the potential for sacred beauty in all things. The belief that everything is possible. Shadow attributes, pessimism, depression, and disbelief in miracles. Believing that energy and action are not required for growth. So here's where we are now. We've got all of these maybe volatile feelings. Those things that we don't know whether or not we're actually safe to be feeling them. And we're either seeing them as and this is like one of those like chew the fruit, spit out the seeds part, because some of you might be feeling like, I see the beauty in my feelings and my emotions. I see that anything is possible if I recover that sense of safety that I feel in expressing and experiencing my emotions. Because people pleasers shut that shit off. People pleasers are like, I learned a long time ago that people don't like it when I have emotions, and I have to regulate other people's emotions with and for them in order for me to be safe, in order for me to feel connected to others. No longer. Khalas. Now we are at the point where we have begun to understand that anything is possible when we allow our own emotions to flow through us. And that includes the sacred beauty of connecting with other people through our emotions. So here's kind of the juxtaposition here. Some people right now in your life might be feeling like you are the fucking bully and you are the one who is intimidating and who's doing too much and and is being verbally and physically abusive. Okay, here's the shadow attribute of the bully again. Conceals deep fears behind verbal or physical abuse. Other people might be interpreting your actions and your new behaviors as verbal or physical abuse. And the reality is, you might just think that your emotions are so beautiful and so sacred that you don't need to hide them anymore. And you don't need to dull them anymore or try to, cover up for your emotional depth and that deepness of your sacred appreciation for and your own compassion toward the suffering that all these experiences and all these emotions were causing you now are affecting other people and making them perceive it um as intimidating and as like doing too much. The other side of this coin is you might be sitting in that place where you are still intimidated by the bigness of your own emotions. And if this is you, if this version of the reading is for you, then you might be feeling a little depressed, a little pessimistic, and a little bit of that disbelief in miracles, disbelief in things changing as greatly as you would like to hope that they could. You would like to believe that they could. If you were to step into those big feeling emotions, and if you were to allow yourself to feel safe enough to experience and then express those big feeling emotions. You might not be there yet, and that's okay. That is where you are right now. And we accept that and we have to acknowledge it so that we can step into the place of sacred beauty that we need to see, that we need to shift our perspective toward so that we can honor those emotions and let them teach us and let them carve out a new path for us that doesn't require other people to feel for us or doesn't require us to feel for them. You are perfectly capable of deeply feeling the emotions that you were avoiding because you were doing it for other people for such a long damn time. So you are perfectly capable of feeling those feelings. You call yourself an empath, right? It's because you were able to take on other people's feelings. The emotions that you're avoiding now are not other people's, they're your own. And I know, I understand how scary that is when you go from doing the emotional work in order to survive and doing the emotional work in order to choose the life that you deserve and that you really want, that you really truly deeply desire. It is so much harder to do things because they are good for us and not just because we have to. Like as people pleasers, as codependents, we had to do that. We had to do that work in order to keep ourselves safe, in order to protect ourselves, in order to feel connection. And now we don't. And now we absolutely do not. So, in the absence of all of that need for empathy and that requirement of compassion toward other people who refuse to feel their own feelings, in that absence, in that void, something has to take it up. Something has to fill that void. And what your emotions are trying to do is take up space. And if you fear the taking up of space, then you are not going to acknowledge the sacred beauty of your emotions and how much you need them to cultivate the life that you really desire. It might be a little intimidating, and also there might be a belief that you don't actually need to. Hang on, sorry, I feel a little bit of snot coming out. It's cold. It's a cold season. So while I'm here in my tank top, I'm still getting pollen from outside because I'm in my trailer. So I've got my windows open and I've got a little bit of pollen that's affecting me. A little bit of snot going on. Anybody else affected by allergies right now? It's a vibe. The other thing that might be happening is here we have the other shadow attribute for the magical child is believing that energy and action are not required for growth. You might also be the kind of bully who is okay with intimidating others with how big your emotions are and just letting yourself be totally free. But you're not necessarily willing to take those feelings on yourself and take on the actions and the behaviors that are required for change. Because your big emotions aren't just there to change other people's worlds or to affect other people so much that they start to treat you in a way that you want. That's manipulation. And people pleasing is a kind of manipulation too. Let's just call it what it is. This is one of the hard things I knew I would have to say that I was like, I'm gonna let you know from the top, this is gonna be hard to hear. People pleasing is a form of manipulation. Because listen, please, just let me finish. While people pleasing is the result of other people enforcing a a an unequal relationship, an unequal power dynamic in which you are taking on all of the emotional labor. And the silent agreement there is that they don't have to do any of it, but you get to stay safe and you get to continue to feel a sense of intimacy. The reality is, the people pleaser could choose not to. The people pleaser could not have people pleased, could not have people close, and could have chosen a different path. Now, because we make these choices as children, they're not really choices. They're not real choices. Because if the only option is feeling connected and feeling disconnected, we're going to choose to feel connected. So as children, we don't really have a choice when we opt into the people pleasing and the codependency dynamic. And then we get old enough where we question it and we try to push back against it. And then as we become adults, we can start to develop relationships from a different place. But if you were an adult and you have been an adult who continued to choose, because at that point it's a choice. If you don't become aware of how your relationships have been affecting you and that you are responsible for some of the reactions that you get in your relationships and some of the ways that the relationships are not reflecting back to you the kind of relationship that you want, then you are responsible for the people-pleasing maneuvers and the people-pleasing behaviors and habits that you've built as patterns to protect yourself, which are showing up in new relationships where people haven't shown you that that's what they need from you necessarily, but you do it anyway. You do the fawning anyway. You do the pretending anyway. You do the masking anyway. You do the emotional performativeness anyway. And that once you are adult enough to choose to do something differently, that becomes a choice to manipulate, to try to manipulate others into playing out the same roles that the people in your childhood did so that you can feel that sense of safety, even though it's a false sense of safety, even though it's an uncomfortable kind of an uncomfortable kind of safety because we choose to stick with the devil that we know instead of the devil that we don't. So here's that choice there. Believing that energy and action are not required for growth is choosing the devil that you know, which is manipulating people into a false sense of connection and safety, manipulating other people to give you the false sense of connection and safety that you used to feel instead of choosing a different path, choosing to act in a different way, choosing a different devil, choosing the other devil who is the scary, intimidating bully who actually embraces and embodies their emotions and shares them with other people and tells other people about their fears. and doesn't swallow down fear and metabolize it as resentment, but actually talk, because that's another form of manipulation. You get to a point where you've built up so many resentments that somebody tries to set a boundary with you, and you just regurgitate all of this resentment onto them, and it becomes an even bigger conflict than it needed to be for somebody telling you, I just need a little something different here for us to continue to connect and to have a good, wonderful, beautiful relationship. I just need a little something different. That's also a form of manipulation. That's a form of control. When you try to make a relationship seem fine in order to keep that relationship by refusing to share your fears and swallowing them down as resentments, refusing to create boundaries with those people that you care about now because you're afraid of how they're going to react or respond. And that's a kind of control too. You're trying to control how they react. You're trying to control how they respond to you by withholding information. But that's not really the kind of relationships that we want, right? We're in recovery from that kind of thing. We're people pleasers in recovery. We don't want for that manipulation to go on any longer, okay? So here's where we are headed, all right? We've got two final cards here. And this is kind of crazy to have these two come up together, okay? We've got the priest already, and we've got an artist. We've got a magical child and a bully. Now we've got a messiah, hello, and a judge. I'm sorry I'm screaming, but a judge. We've got some pretty interesting archetypes here, and I'm going to read those light and shadow attributes for both of these together. I'm going to read them back to back. I'm going to read the messiah first and then the judge so that we can hear what this picture, something's telling me that there's a full picture that comes together when we bring these together. So here's together. Here's more together for you. Messiah, light attribute, serving humanity with humility. Shadow attribute, exaggerated belief that you are the only means through which a cause can succeed. Judge, light attributes, balancing justice and compassion, managing the fair distribution of power. Shadow attributes, offering only destructive criticism, misusing business, legal, or criminal authority. So we'll just rename that as misusing authority. Okay, I'm going to read these light attributes together again, and same with the shadow ones because I feel like they speak to each other. The Messiah light attributes are serving humanity with humility, and the Judge light attributes are balancing justice and compassion, managing the fair distribution of power. Managing the fair distribution of power by balancing justice and compassion sounds a lot like serving humanity with humility, because it takes humility as a judge to be able to serve humanity in that structural sense. Messiahs are unstructured. Messiahs have that chaotic element to them, whereas judges have that orderly element. And I think that's why they seem to balance each other out in this reading. So where we are going, that's what these cards are showing us. This is where we're headed as people pleasers in recovery, and these are some of the traits that we can look forward to and that we are attempting now to begin initiating ourselves into if we haven't already started the process. The light attributes of what we are initiating into are serving humanity with humility, being able to be humble enough to observe the injustice and the discompassionate way that we might have been treating other people in our relationships by continuing to perpetuate these people-pleasing habits without realizing how controlling it is and how manipulative it is to try to keep to keep cultivating relationships that have that model for relating without reinventing uh, that internal system, recalibrating that internal system toward honesty and toward the sacred beauty of all the things that make us human. That's what serving humanity with humility is. Recognizing that the humanity within ourselves is something that we might have been dimming or trying not to shed a light on because we're so afraid that our humanity and our realness is going to push other people away or scare other people away. We are also initiating into, like I said, there has been an injustice and a discompassionate way that we've been operating. It's not right to treat our feelings and our big emotions in such a way that we are making them feel like we need to avoid them. That's so rude of us to treat our own emotions that way by ignoring them and by avoiding them because we've deemed them to be big and scary. That's the lack of compassion that we've been feeling toward ourselves, the witnessing of suffering, and the benevolent desire to alleviate that suffering is how compassion operates, is how compassion works. We witness suffering, we do something about it. Empathy is taking on other people's suffering because we think that it's going to help them and because it in some way makes us feel, and this is a selfishness, this is a manipulation, this is like a a version of relating to other people. This is a relational habit that mimics connection but is not real connection. Empathy is sometimes the opposite of real connection because what we're doing is we're metabolizing other people's feelings at the expense of our own, or maybe even at the expense of our own boundaries. Like if we don't have the space or we don't feel safe enough to be doing it, but we're doing it anyway because we feel like we have to, because we feel like just being witness to somebody else's emotions means that we have to swallow them down. That is a habit that doesn't serve the humanity in that person and doesn't serve your own humanity either. And it's unfair, which makes it an injustice. It's an injustice to you to keep treating yourself that way as though you're a receptacle for other people's emotions. But this is what we're initiating into, is not treating other people as fillers and distractions for our own humanity and serving the justice that we feel in our relationships, that sense of justice, that sense of right and wrong that we feel in our relationships and that we feel toward ourselves, treating it with compassion. How are we going to see injustice if we are not being witness to the suffering? And how are we not going to act justly if we don't do the second part that is required of compassion? After witnessing suffering, you do something about it. You do something to alleviate that suffering. That is where justice takes us. That is when we feel angry about the injustices that we see in the world. That is the purpose of that negative emotion, is to orient us toward justice, allow us to be witnesses of, not just witnesses of the suffering because that's what made us angry in the first place, but to become compassionate holders of and carriers of that anger and that orientation toward justice, because then we have to do something about it. because then that means that our compassion orients us toward the human instinct to alleviate suffering. Some of us are psychopaths, some of us are sociopaths. And I understand that that is brain chemistry, and we cannot put a negative stigma on people who see the world differently because as neurodivergents, we see the world differently too. I mean, I'm assuming that you're neurodivergent if you're watching this, because that's a thing. That's my thing. Not my thing, but that's one of my things. That's one of the things that I okay. But we can't put, people who are psychopaths and sociopaths, we can't lump them into the same group, and we can't have the same expectations toward people who don't experience compassion, who may witness suffering but don't experience that same uh that same benevolent desire to do something to alleviate that suffering. Okay? So I just want to name that there are sociopaths and psychopaths who live in the world who cannot help how their brain chemistry works in the same way that your neurodivergence is something that you cannot help. It's something that you have to live with and something that you have to grow with. So, whatever feelings that you might have about your own witnessing of compassion and maybe the injustice that you feel about there being certain people who are let off the hook because they can't or are unwilling to do that. Some of them literally can't. Some people literally cannot experience compassion. Donald Trump literally cannot experience compassion because he witnesses suffering and he doesn't have any desire to do anything about it. Point blank. There are people out there who don't have that component. And that's not a way to, I'm not letting them off the hook by saying that. I'm acknowledging reality. Because something that I notice in the shadow side of the judge that is combined with the shadow attribute of the Messiah, here let me read them together for you, is offering only destructive criticism, misusing authority, and the exaggerated belief that you are the only means through which a cause can succeed. The shadow side here is that because we have compassion, because we feel justice, because we are serving humanity through our humility, we get fucking pissed as recovering people pleasers when we don't see other people making the same effort to do their own recovery, to participate in their own recovery and participate in that compassion orientation within community. Don't care about community in the sense that they are not trying to serve justice and they're not bearing witness to other people and what's going on with them. We immediately criticize, and that's what we get distracted by. We immediately feel that they are misusing their authority, and that's what we get distracted by. We immediately over exaggerate that our way is the right way and the only way and the best way to reorient in community and reorient toward renew ourselves in relational rightness, in right relationship. And in the same way that feeling other people's feelings for them was a distraction to keep you from your work, this is too. This shadow side of the judge and the Messiah, this is what we need to initiate into, is understanding that this is a fucking distraction. To pay attention to how other people are not serving humanity or are doing it without a sense of humility and believing that our way is the only way or the best way, it's a distraction. It's you choosing to fill the void of what you're trying to create and cultivate in your world with other people. You're looking at other people's paper. You're looking at other people's test while you're taking your test. You can't you can't look at what other people are doing and allow that to be the thing that you are so focused on that you're not even taking your own test anymore. You're not even working on your own fucking work anymore. The point here is that we need to initiate into the just and compassionate service toward humanity with humility, okay? Without getting distracted by criticizing others and how they're doing it based on how we think is the right way to do it. Because there are people who just fucking can't. There are people who just don't have it. They don't got it. They don't got it. Not everybody is like you, as much as you would like it to be true. I've experienced that a whole lot in my life where I'm like, why can't people just be like me and be able to forgive and have compassion and do this and do that and do the right thing? It's a really great way to distract yourself in a moral high ground. And look, that's where the Messiah and the judge meet. That's the meeting place of the Messiah and the judge. Is these roles meet in the moral high ground, in the moral ethical high ground. Our initiation is into the thing that we need to look forward to as we embody the magical child and the bully right now in this present moment. We need to look forward to how our magical child and our bully are making us see the perspective that we have from this place on the ethical and moral quandary of what the fuck other people are doing in the communities that we're trying to cultivate compassion in and we're trying to feel deeply within. We cannot allow ourselves to get distracted. We cannot allow ourselves to orient toward and focus on and hyper focus, because that's what some of us neurodivergent people are real good at, is that hyper focus, that good sweet hyper focus. Some of us are really good at that, and that means that we might hyper focus on the wrong thing. So don't do that. just don't just don't do it. I'm just kidding. It's not as easy as that. And that's the compassion and that's the humility coming back in here. Whoop. The compassion and the humility say, I've witnessed the suffering that I play out in my life when I allow what other people are doing wrong to fill my head and fill my body and fill my nervous system with vibrations and with energy and with emotion more than I've focused on the good feelings. And not just feeling good, as in like toxic positivity, just feeling good in spite of all the bad that's going on. I mean, feeling good, as in feeling the sense of rightness in owning your entire humanity, owning your wholeness. And your wholeness is reaching toward justice when you feel anger, reaching toward what you desire more of when you feel jealousy, reaching toward community when you feel frustration or overwhelm, reaching toward comfort when you feel sad. All of that helps ground you in your wholeness. And our wholeness and orienting toward our wholeness is the whole point of recovering from people pleasing. We gave parts of ourselves away to others, and we gave so much away, and we held so much space for other people that we've lost some of those parts along the way. And that's what recovery means. We're recovering those parts. We're reclaiming those parts of ourselves. And as we pull back together all of these parts and we turn ourselves toward wholeness and serving from that compassionate place, from that place where we understand innately what it means to be in right relationship with the earth, with each other, between nations, within ourselves. That is the thing that we need to focus on. That is the thing that we need to continue to give our attention and our energy toward. And it's not easy because all the distractions are out there. But this is to say that the initiation is already beginning. Because if these cards came up, this Messiah and the Judge, it means that the universe has already begun tugging on the thread that connects all of us people pleasers in recovery, connects us to exactly what it is that we are all trying to turn our attention toward and funnel into. It's like we're all starting to highlight and get a spotlight effect on right relationship, which includes compassion and includes justice, but not from a moral high ground place. We've learned, as we've learned in this reading. I think there are some of you who still have questions, and I'm feeling that. I'm feeling like the yeah, but the yes and. And I would love to just point out that as a reader, I do have individual card readings that we can do one-on-one together. I record them over Zoom, and typically a 1 hour reading, I'll let it go for not always as long as it needs to, but for a first reading, like if it's the first time in a long time that you're getting a reading, or maybe the first time ever that you're getting a card reading, then I'll let the universe speak for as long as it feels like it needs to. And I record the reading and I send it to you so that you can have that to listen to over the coming weeks, the coming months. Honestly, I think listening again 3 weeks later and then another 3 months later are really good points at which you can see. I mean, 3 weeks is 21 days, and 21 days builds a new habit. We can build new habits every 21 days. So it's kind of nice to see where we are now, where we've come from, and where we're going, and remind ourselves of those messages and reorient ourselves every now and then. I've been using that word a lot, and I think there's like a big shift that's happening for us, which I love. But if you feel like you need more personalized confirmation of what you're going through, or you would like some more like very individualized for you sort of clarity, then the link is in the description for this video, and I would love to do a reading for you because it's truly, it blows my mind just how much we have in common when we receive these messages together. And I truly believe that every reading that I've ever done for anybody else has been something that I needed to hear too. Like, I needed to hear a lot of this today. No lie. This has been a little bit, for me. I've been taking notes personally as I've been reading for us. So I'm probably going to watch my own video again in another 2 or 3 weeks just to be like, did I remember exactly what I said about this one thing, and have I been initiating into it? Hmm. That's all I've got, my loves. Thank you so much for joining me. If you would like any other resources from me, they're all in the description for this video. So go and check it out. You can check out my writing on Substack as well. There's a piece on what happens when the masks come down, which is a call to moderation, something that I think everybody needs, but especially I think people and women with ADHD really need to crystallize an understanding of because it's a way of life that has really served me and also I think helps us embody right relationship. So hope you go and check that out. I love you so much. You're deserving of all the love you desire. Stay tuned if you have some perfectionism in there that you're recovering from as well. Or if you want to hear about um, some roles that we've been playing as highly sensitive people. I don't know if I'm going to use a different deck for that one. Like I brought out other cards, so I might use my other cards for the highly sensitive people reading. And if you're a highly sensitive person, that just means that you're probably ADHD, autistic, or neurodivergent. Who'da thunk it? So stay tuned for those readings. I love you so much. You're deserving of all the love you desire. And I hope you have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your day. Mwah.